Caden Voss had not spoken a single word for 3 days after he woke up. He lay in the great stone bed of his fortress, staring at the ceiling, while men in heavy armor stood at his door, and women in fine dresses brought him food he did not touch. They looked at him with something between fear and sadness. He did not know why. He did not know them. He did not know himself. His name, they told him, was Caden. He was a king. He ruled 5 wolf clans across the Highland territories, and every wolf in the land answered to him. He was the Alpha King, the strongest, the most feared, the most respected leader the Ironmoor pack had ever seen. He listened to all of it quietly. None of it felt true. None of it felt like anything at all. He remembered nothing. Not his childhood, not his battles, not the faces of the men who served him. It was as though someone had taken his entire life and locked it behind a door he could not find. The healers said it was the enchantment, the dark magic laced into the blade that cut him during the ambush. His body had healed. His mind had not. The only thing that remained, deep and quiet beneath everything, was his wolf. He could feel it, a warm, steady presence somewhere inside his chest, like an ember that refused to go out. His wolf had not lost anything. It remembered. It simply could not speak in words, and so Caden did not know what it was trying to tell him. He spent his days sitting by the window, looking out over the mountain valley below, green hills, gray sky, smoke rising from the village at the base of the mountain. Somewhere down there, life was continuing without any awareness of the king who had forgotten how to be one. His beta, Riker, came every morning with reports. Riker was a broad, quiet man with a steady voice and careful eyes. He never pushed, he simply informed, and then he left. Caden appreciated that more than he could say. One morning, Riker mentioned that the council had arranged an inspection of the lower village, a show of normalcy for the surrounding clans, who were growing suspicious of the king's absence. Caden agreed to go. He needed to move. The walls of the fortress had begun to feel like something pressing against him. They rode down the mountain with a small guard. The village was modest, stone houses, open market stalls, the smell of bread and wood smoke. People stepped aside as he passed, heads lowered, eyes careful. He nodded at them and felt like an actor performing a role he had not rehearsed. And then he saw her. She was standing near the far end of the market, her arms full of bundled herbs, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. She was not watching him. She was scanning the crowd with a particular kind of alertness, the eyes of someone who was always watching for trouble, always ready to step quietly out of the way of it. She wore simple clothes. She carried no title, no ornamentation, nothing that should have made her stand out among the dozens of other people in the square. His wolf moved. It was not a gradual thing. It was immediate and complete, like something heavy shifting in the center of his chest, like a lock turning. Caden stopped walking. He was not aware that he had stopped until Riker glanced back at him, with an expression that was carefully, deliberately neutral. Caden stared at the woman across the market square. He did not know her. He was certain he had never seen her before in his life. And yet every part of him that was wolf, every part of him that existed below thought and reason, was pointing at her with a certainty that felt older than memory. He walked toward her before he decided to. She noticed him when he was a few steps away. Her eyes met his, and something moved through her face. Fast, controlled, gone before he could name it. She lowered her head slightly in the way of someone acknowledging rank. "My lord," she said. Her voice was even. "You do not have to do that," he said. She looked up. She studied him for a moment. "Most people prefer I do." "I am not most people, apparently." He paused. "I am sorry. I do not know your name." Something shifted behind her eyes. It was very brief and very quiet. "Elara," she said. "Elara Maren. I am a healer. I serve the lower village." Elara. He said her name once, and his wolf went absolutely still inside him, the stillness of something that had just heard exactly what it was waiting for. "Do we know each other?" She was quiet for one moment too long. "You knew me," she said finally. "I am not sure I ever fully knew you." It was the strangest answer he had ever received. It was also the most honest thing anyone had said to him in 3 days. He wanted to ask her more. But his guard was close, and her arms were full of herbs, and she had the look of someone who had somewhere to be, and did not expect anyone to care. So he let her go. He thought about her the entire ride back up the mountain. He told himself it was simply because she was unusual, because she spoke to him without performance, because her answer had been strange, and he was a man with nothing but questions and very few answers. He told himself it had nothing to do with the way his wolf had lunged toward her like a compass finding north. Over the following days he made inquiries. Carefully, without explanation, he learned that Elara Maren was half human, half wolf, that she had grown up on the edges of pack society, not rejected, but not truly belonging either, that she was skilled with medicine and herbs, quiet in her manner, and respected by the villagers she served, if not by the court above them. He requested her services as a healer for his ongoing recovery. His council exchanged glances. He pretended not to notice. Elara came to the fortress 3 times a week after that. She was professional and precise. She checked his wounds without flinching, spoke without flattery, and never once tried to impress him. The court women who moved through the fortress, silk dresses, careful smiles, voices shaped to please, felt like noise after her silence. He found reasons to extend their sessions. He asked her questions about the village, about her work, about the plants she used and why. She answered plainly, without embellishment. Once, when he tried a small joke, she looked at him with mild surprise, as though she had not expected him to be capable of it, and then, just briefly, she smiled. It changed her entire face. He thought about that smile later that evening, alone in his room, and felt something he had no name for press against the inside of his ribs. One evening, after she had redressed a wound on his shoulder, he asked her directly, "Did we know each other well?" "Before I forgot?" She was quiet for a long time. Her hands continued their work, folding the bandage, setting her tools aside. Then she stopped, and she looked at him, and she said, "We were beginning to." "Beginning to," he repeated. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said carefully, "that there was something between us that had not yet been decided. And then you forgot. And I thought," she stopped herself. "You thought what?" She looked out the window. "I thought it was kinder to let it go." He stared at her. "Kinder to whom?" "To you." She began packing her bag. A man who has lost his memory deserves to choose freely, not to be handed back a bond like a debt he owed. She left before he could find the words to answer her. He sat with what she had said for a long time that night. A bond. She had used that word, and she had walked away from it, from whatever it was, because she did not want him to feel obligated, because she had decided, on her own, silently, that his freedom mattered more than her own claim. He had met nobles who schemed for power, council members who lied to his face, women who smiled and calculated and positioned themselves. He had met all of them in the past few weeks, watching them through the eyes of a man who had no past and therefore no loyalty to offer. Not one of them had ever thought about what he might need. Elara had, without telling him, without asking for anything in return. The next morning, Riker came to him with a look on his face that meant difficult news. "There is something you need to know," Riker said. He told him. He told him about the council, about Lord Severin, who had seen the memory loss as an opportunity, a chance to quietly erase an alliance that was politically inconvenient and replace it with a more suitable one, about the arrangements already being made with a high-blood alpha female from a neighboring clan, about the choice that had been made for him, without his knowledge, while he lay in bed, not knowing his own name. Caden sat very still while Riker spoke. Then he stood, and he called for Lord Severin. The conversation was brief. Severin was a careful man, practiced in the language of justification. He spoke about duty and strategy, and the responsibilities of leadership. He was not wrong about any of it, technically. He was simply wrong about the part where it was his decision to make. Caden removed him from the council before the end of the hour. That evening, he went to the lower village. Elara was in her small workroom at the back of the healer's house, grinding something with a stone mortar, a single lamp burning beside her. She looked up when he appeared in the doorway. She did not look surprised. She looked like a woman bracing herself. He stepped inside. He told her what Riker had told him. He told her what he had done about it. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she set down the mortar and looked at him with those steady, watchful eyes. You didn't have to do that, she said. I know. Severin was not entirely wrong. It would cost you politically. I know that too. She was quiet. I want to understand what we were, he said. Before. I know I cannot get my memories back by asking, but I want to understand who you are to me, and I would like to do it honestly. Not because someone told me to. Not because my wolf is pulling me in your direction, though it is. He paused. Because I have spent 3 weeks watching you, and I think you are the most honest person I have ever met, and I would like more of that in my life. She looked at him for a long moment. Her expression was difficult to read. Then she said, quietly, You are very different without your memories. Better or worse? She considered it seriously, the way she considered everything. More visible, she said at last, less defended. He almost smiled. Is that a good thing? I think, she said slowly, it might be the realest version of you I have ever seen. The full moon came 10 days later. The gathering was mandatory for every wolf in the territory, a tradition that held regardless of politics or crisis. Caden stood at the center of the stone courtyard, as his pack assembled around him, noble and common alike, the great families and the village wolves, and everyone in between. Torchlight moved across their faces. He had not shifted since waking. The healers had advised against it while his mind was still healing, but the moon was pulling at him, and his wolf was restless in a way that made his hands unsteady. He felt her before he saw her, the particular quality of attention that sharpened whenever Elara was nearby. She was standing near the outer edge of the courtyard, slightly apart from the crowd, as she always was. His wolf did not ask for permission. He shifted without deciding to, the change moving through him like a wave, and then he was standing on 4 legs in the torchlight, with the cold air sharp against his senses, and the whole world suddenly loud and clear and overwhelming. And the only thing that mattered in any of it was her. He walked across the courtyard. He was aware of the silence falling around him. He was aware of the council watching, of the noble families holding their breath, of Riker standing very still with something careful on his face. He did not stop walking. He reached Elara and stood before her. She looked down at him, at his wolf, with her eyes very bright, and her jaw set in the way of someone who was refusing to let themselves fall apart. He did not circle her. He did not command or perform. He simply lowered himself to the ground at her feet. The courtyard was absolutely silent. Slowly, with a hand that was not entirely steady, Elara reached down and placed her palm on top of his head. Every wolf in the courtyard felt it. The bond rang out from that single point of contact like a bell struck in a quiet room. Clean, clear, undeniable. Several of the older wolves closed their eyes. A few of the younger ones made soft sounds they could not help. In the morning, Caden stood before his council in human form, dressed in the formal clothes of his rank. He had slept, which he had not done fully in weeks. His wolf was quiet inside him, not the quiet of suppression, but the quiet of peace. He named Elara Maren his mate, publicly, formally, with the full weight of his title and the full knowledge of what it would cost him in certain political circles. He said it plainly and without decoration, the way he had learned she would want him to. His council received it in silence. Some of them agreed, some of them did not. All of them understood that the decision was final. Riker, at the far end of the table, said nothing. He simply looked at his king with steady, quiet eyes and nodded once. Elara learned of it secondhand, the way she learned most things, carefully from a distance, waiting to see if it was real before she let herself believe it. He found her that afternoon in the small herb garden she had already started at the edge of the fortress wall, practical as ever, planning for winter stores before she had even fully settled in. He sat on the low stone beside her without saying anything. She continued working, her hands moving through the soil. After a while she said, "You still don't remember everything." "No," he agreed. "Some of it may never come back." "I know." She sat back on her heels and looked at him. Her eyes were serious and careful, as they always were. "Then why?" He thought about it honestly, the way she had taught him to. "Because I do not need to remember choosing you the first time," he said. "I chose you this morning. I will choose you tomorrow." He paused. "That seems like enough." She looked at him for a long moment. Something in her face softened, slowly, like a door opening that had been closed for a very long time. She reached over and took his hand. The mountain was quiet around them. The sky was turning that deep gold color that comes just before evening. Below, the village moved through its ordinary rhythms, unbothered by kings or councils or the ancient pull of wolf bonds. Caden sat beside the woman his wolf had recognized before his mind could argue, and he felt, for the first time since waking, in that cold stone room with no name and no past, entirely, completely, and quietly at home.